Speedrunning. If you've been online at all lately, then you've certainly heard of it. Especially in the past few years, speedrunning has experienced an exponential rise thanks to documentarians like Summoning Salt regularly peaking the trending tab on YouTube, along with the vast multitude of content creators comprising a list much too long to enumerate in this video. Many people, however, have misgivings about this hobby. Opponents may say, "It is such a waste of time. If you focus the energy that you exert on speedrunning into something more productive, maybe you could actually improve the world. The whole thing is just a futile effort to see numbers go down. It's pointless." While I would typically dismiss these comments by pointing out that one could make a case like this for any recreational activity, there is one aspect of these derisive comments I'd like to genuinely discuss, that being the question of whether speedrunning actually is an overall waste of time. To actually state the question for the record, when speedrunning, how much time is wasted? Rather, how much of the time spent could be categorized as dead time? By dead time I mean time spent doing nothing, or just waiting. Let's begin our research in the community that I've spent the vast majority of my time in since 2020, Super Mario Bros. In SMB1, there are a lot of cutscenes. Entering and exiting pipes, of which there are many, the initial cutscene of Mario walking into the pipe at the beginning of 1-2, 2-2, 4-2, and 7-2, loading times between levels and rooms, Bowser's death animation, etc. What if we consolidate all of this dead time? How much of the run is spent waiting or doing nothing? If we take into account every frame of the current any percent world record where an input has no determination on the outcome of a certain situation, the complete number of dead frames comes to exactly 5,640 out of the total 17,707. This ratio could be slightly higher or lower, however, the numbers don't need to be pinpoint accurate. Plus, the margin of error couldn't be any more than a handful of frames. That's 1 minute and 34 seconds of absolutely inconsequential time out of the total 4 minutes and 54 seconds. As a percentage, exactly 31.85%. Nearly a third. And this doesn't take into account the various start delays that could be employed to change enemy patterns throughout the run. The largest delay I've ever unironically seen is in Niftski's current Warpless world record with a start delay of 24.59 seconds. This start delay is ridiculous, especially when considering that a majority of runs are destined to die within the first 2 worlds thanks to how jam-packed with hard tricks they are. Fun fact, the FPG in 1-1 happens at exactly 18.4 seconds into the run. Therefore, in runs where this trick is unsuccessful, Niftski is waiting longer on the title screen than he is actually playing the game, not to mention the 6 full seconds of dead time already present in 1-1. While we're on the topic of Warpless, let's calculate the dead time for this category as well. Using the same method as for any percent, the numbers come out to a staggering 26,594 dead frames out of the total 68,203. That is 7 minutes and 23 seconds out of a 19-minute run, or 38.99%, even worse than for any percent. Not to mention the comical 25-second start delay, which bumps these figures to nearly 8 minutes and almost 40% when accounted for. In light of these statistics, I am unfortunately inclined to agree with these conceited naysayers in their claim that speedrunning is a time-wasting hobby and nothing more. But wait, no, this is not how this is supposed to work. Basing a blanket statement like that off of such limited observation is the first thing you learn not to do when researching. We need to analyze another game. We'll do a game in the same vein, one that would theoretically have the most time at its disposal to waste due to its preeminence in the overall speedrunning community, Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 has consistently been one of, if not the most popular game for people to speedrun, topping the player activity chart on speedrun.com multiple times in the website's near decade-long existence. However, on further examination, SM64 is plagued with the same issue as SMB1, an overabundance of time-robbing cutscenes or animations that wrench control from the player. Unlike for SMB1, I cannot count every dead frame individually, mostly due to the duration of these runs and my unwillingness to waste such a copious amount of time counting all of them. However, we can get a very accurate guess based off of the systematic length of these dead animations and cutscenes. Starting off, directly at the beginning of the game, before we are given the opportunity to even glance at Mario, much less control him, we are subject to an infamously unskippable 55-second cutscene at the beginning of every attempt. This cutscene is the subject of many snobbish comments directed at runners. They go something like this. Dude, imagine how much of the precious God-given time you have spent sitting in that chair doing nothing, watching the same intro cutscene over and over again. I don't understand how you guys can stand it. Though certainly gratuitous, these comments always interested me. How much time has been wasted watching this one cutscene? This would be a trivial calculation. However, many of the top SM64 runners actually don't show their attempt count. Be it intentional or not, this makes the calculation more complicated, requiring estimation. So let's perform a rough estimation. Let's assume that one is doing 16 star and is given 3 hours each day to do runs, excluding practice. Let's say the average run is around 3 minutes at the top level. Using this metric, we can assume that, in 3 hours, a runner can do a maximum of around 60 attempts. Already that's almost an hour of just intro cutscene. Out of the 3 you allocated to do runs in a given day. A third of your time just gone. This brief estimation is obviously prone to be extremely inaccurate, but I believe it shows how quickly dead time like this can stack up. Oh, but I'm not done yet. There's still a whole game that has to be beaten. What of that? Here's a list of all the things in SM64 that I deemed worthy of considering as dead time. All of the different door opening animations, text boxes appearing and disappearing, spawning and collecting stars, entering stages and loading zones, pause exiting, going through teleporters, all of the Bowser cutscenes, collecting the keys in Dark World and Fire Sea, opening and entering a cannon, and, of course, the intro cutscene. Let's work through these in sections, starting with doors. The normal door animation with no fade out takes 51 frames, and with a fade out it becomes 123 frames. The key door takes 231 frames when opening for the first time. The star requirement animation takes 160 frames. The star door takes 48 frames to open. Text boxes take a total of about 45 frames to appear and disappear. I opted to omit counting the time where the player is mashing through the text due to the variability in the length of each text box. The special stage entry cutscene takes approximately 70 frames. This slightly varies based on the specific occasion. However, 70 is the figure I chose for all subsequent calculations. The duration of the stage entry cutscene is approximately 180 to 210 frames depending on which stage is being entered. The constant of 200 is used for all subsequent calculations. Bowser's intro and death cutscenes in both Dark World and Fire Sea are 204 and 105 frames respectively, and in Sky they are 204 and 222 frames respectively. Side note, I decided to include into the intro cutscene the full time of their text boxes since all 3 of them are identical in length, having 3. I did not do this for the death animation, however, opting instead to simply count this as another normal text box based off the criteria described above. Grabbing keys at the end of Dark World and Fire Sea both take 336 frames. Another side note, since all of these animations are present in every RTA speedrun of this game, I will not be mentioning them past this point. Just know that I have accounted for them. This also includes the 2 key door opening animations, along with the intro cutscene. Opening a cannon takes around 279 frames. The cutscene when entering a cannon takes 100 frames. Pause exiting takes 45 frames. Teleporters take 75 frames when activated. A normal star's spawning animation takes about 116 frames. The 100 coin, Toad's, and Mips's stars differ slightly from the normal star with a 103 frame spawning animation. Collecting a normal star takes about 288 frames. Collecting a 100 coin, Toad's, or Mips's star takes about 132 frames. Note, I decided to count the text box in this case as well, as it is the same across all of these stars. Spawning and collecting a secret star that doesn't take Mario out of the level when he collects it takes 116 and 132 frames respectively, adding up to 248 frames. And of course, the intro cutscene, for the purposes of this video, is 55 seconds. For clarification, all of these numbers are subject to slight variability due to change in the conditions of the described events, along with the possibility of me miscounting or assuming things to be true that may not be. However, once again, pinpoint accuracy is not necessary for our purposes. With all of this information, we can calculate approximately how much time has truly been wasted in SM64 speedrunning, and, using the world record in each of the 4 main categories, here is what I found. In Greensweege's 0-star world record of 6:16, dead time totals to 2 minutes and 47.87 seconds, 44.65% of the full run. In Greensweege's 1-star record of 6:57, dead time totals to 2 minutes and 58.97 seconds, 42.92% of the full run. In Greensweege's 16-star record of 14:35, dead time totals to 7 minutes and 27.69 seconds, 51.16% of the full run. In Ikori's 70-star record of 46:28, dead time totals to 24 minutes and 30.80 seconds, 52.75% of the full run. And in Karin's 120-star record of 136:48, dead time totals to 41 minutes and 4.01 seconds, 42.42% of the full run. As you can see from this earnestly collected data, there is a consistent bisection in the ratio of playtime and dead time in SM64. In the cases of 16 and 70-star, dead time actually exceeds playtime. Flawed as these data may be, the fact that it is possible to even consider figures so high is extraordinary. I've heard it said that speedrunning is 20% practice and 80% finding the time. With the results of this research proving that half of the time spent playing the game is in reality wasted, I can see why finding the requisite amount of time would be such an issue. This data is a lot of fun to mess around with. For example, if we extrapolate the amount of dead time to every run on the SM64 leaderboards, adding up each run's corresponding amount of dead time, each according to their category, we can get a grand total of wasted time for every verified run. Doing this, the figure I ended up with is a gargantuan 118.2 days wasted on the things listed above, meaning that if you were to watch every SM64 run on SRC back-to-back, 118.2 days would be spent on dead time. And this is only for the individual runs currently on the leaderboards. This doesn't consider any of the millions of cumulative runs attempted by thousands of different people. If it did, this grand total would easily exceed decades, if not centuries. Doing this for SMB1, we get a grand total of 3.4 days. Once again, this accounts solely for the personal bests in 90% and warpless that are currently on the Speedrun.com leaderboards, and omits all previous PBs, a numerous selection of category extensions, a stark amount of failed attempts, and time spent practicing. If accounted for, dead time in these areas would easily increase this figure by orders of magnitude, as would also be the case in SM64. From all this, I think one thing is clear. This concept of dead time is likely the most dramatic flaw in all of speedrunning, exacerbating the simple maxim that these games were not designed for such intense scrutiny. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone should immediately give up speedrunning forever in order to save themselves from the horrors of dead time. No, that would be excessive. Virtually every aspect of life has this much, if not more, dead time. For example, things such as driving, eating, sleeping, waiting in line at a restaurant, advertisements, using the restroom, and so on. All these could be categorized as real-life dead time. No, what I think is needed is reform in the way we think about and play these games with regards to our time, and in some cases, such as the SM64 intro cutscene, a reform of the rules in order to facilitate this mindset. Tackling the latter. In other games, most notably Super Mario Sunshine and Ocarina of Time, there was extensive debate regarding their respective intro cutscenes, with OOT's being just over 3 minutes and Sunshine's intro sequence being a staggering 8 minutes in length. With this copious length, such debates were understandably accelerated. Eventually, both of these communities agreed to allow the viewing of these cutscenes to be opt-in, in OT's case by saving immediately after gaining control of Link, and then subsequently copying this cutscene-less file for every run. In Sunshine's case, given the lack of any in-game way to skip these cutscenes, and the fact that in between the two major cutscenes there is a short section of gameplay and a boss fight that ought not be skipped, a community-regulated file hack is copied and used to grant the player the option to skip them. In both cases, these changes were met with positivity and gratitude, and it is safe to say that they made their respective games much more enjoyable to play and to watch than before. Plus, if you were so inclined to disagree on these rulings, there is still the option to watch these cutscenes at no cost. Except for your time, of course. Taking these precedents into account, I believe that the SM64 community still requiring every runner to watch the intro cutscene every single time is one of the most egregiously neglectful sins in all speedrunning. I would even go as far as to accuse this of being irresponsible given SM64's stature as the most popular game in speedrunning, along with its massive volume of players thereby affording the most possible time to waste. To make this issue clear, let's take a rough estimation. Let's say that there are 10 runners from each of the 5 main categories, each with 10,000 attempts. This number may seem high, but it is a fairly reasonable number for runners who have been in the community for multiple years, especially those who mainly play shorter categories, totaling 50 players and 500,000 attempts. Across those 500,000 attempts, a total of 318 days have been lost to the intro cutscene, with each runner losing 6 days from their lives, and all from this one seemingly innocuous cutscene. To think how simple it would be to remove it, thereby saving those tragically wasted 10.5 months. I mean, the tools exist, it's not like it's hard. And not to mention that this very limited number of players by no means unfolds the magnitude of runs attempted throughout the game's decades-long history across thousands of runners. If everything were somehow accounted for, this figure would no doubt total up to many decades. SM64 is the ABBA when it comes to this. Despite there being no instance of gameplay, nor input at all for that matter, between selecting your file and the initial text box, still, the community insists on keeping this obvious blemish a part of their run. I really can't understand any argument against at least allowing the option to skip it. If you don't personally agree with skipping, then you can simply opt to watch it and preserve whatever superstition that compels you to do so. And no, this would not necessarily require the retiming of every run on the leaderboard. We could simply copy what Sunshine does and set the timer to begin at 55 seconds. I'm sorry if this seems confrontational or crass, and I'd like to clarify that I'm not accusing any individual for these faults. This is obviously just my opinion, one that I believe would promote the overall health of the game, but an opinion nonetheless. However, it is also my belief that this sentiment is widespread, it is just not collectively realized. Therefore, it will sooner or later be realized that this 55-second intro does not add any substance to the game in any scenario besides one's initial playthrough, and that only good can come from pruning away such unnecessary dead time. Trimming the single minute could literally accelerate the game's growth by months, if not years, down the line. As for how we view our time as speedrunners, I personally know how easy it is to be careless and waste many hours without even realizing it. Time is our most valuable resource, and it is my belief that one must utilize their time as effectively as possible in order to squeeze as much out of every day as one can. To give practical advice for doing this with regard to speedrunning, first things first, get save states, or a practice hack if your game has one. Attempting to practice without these things is the easiest way to waste monstrous amounts of time. Second, be sure to configure the game's settings to facilitate the most efficient practice possible, if any of this nature exists. For example, going into the settings in the Pelson ROM for SMB1, we can modify the save and load delay. Setting this to the lowest possible value of 0.1, we save exactly 29 frames, nearly half a second, for every state saved or loaded. As you can see, this can easily make a massive difference if utilized effectively. Third, make it a habit to set your save states as close to what you're actually practicing as you comfortably can. Time in this area can very quickly add up if you're not careful. Fourth, try to avoid excessive full level or stage practice and opt for focusing solely on the specific areas where you're struggling. I'd advise full level practice only when you feel you've completely mastered each individual section and need to prove that you're able to string everything together. And when you are doing this, be sure to once again save state as late as you possibly can to cut out any unnecessary animations or cutscenes. Fifth, if your emulator has it, abuse the fast forward function during any extended periods of dead time. This is usually a feature on emulators for retro games. And of course, if your game allows it, skip the intro cutscene. Justifying any other action is impossible if there are no consequences for doing so. Quality is much more potent than quantity. Abuse this fact when practicing. Do not mindlessly attempt something over and over. This is a waste of time. Instead, really pay attention to the inputs, and when you make a mistake, check back a recording to discern the exact reason for said mistake. Set a practice schedule. Too often I see people engage in haphazard practice for 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 hours before starting attempts. Though I am guilty of this myself, it is still an obvious waste of time. Allocate yourself 10 to 15 minutes for each individual thing that needs practice, and always start runs after, at most, 1 hour of this. If you find starting runs difficult, it is important to remember that not every session needs to be successful, as failure is the first step to success. However, pushing yourself excessively and for too long during your sessions, a thing I am also guilty of, is not effective either. The longer you play, the worse things will inevitably become due to the slow decline of your ability to focus. So, if things aren't going very well for you after the first hour or so, then take a break until the next day to recharge your energy and mindset. These time management skills are as essential as the practice you're imposing it on, and if implemented, your rate of improvement will exponentially increase. Throughout all of my time with SMB1, I probably wasted about half of it on things that were excessive or unnecessary. I've learned from speedrunning, if nothing else, that time is extremely easy to waste. That doing nothing is much, much easier than doing something. But we simply do not have time like that to waste, and that's not just true in speedrunning, but in everything. So, what about instances of dead time in SM64 and SMB1 that are not practice related? Unfortunately, there really isn't much that can be done. The only reason I single out SM64's intro cutscene is because of its position in the run, being directly at the start, how easily and innocuously it could be removed, and the vast benefits that could be obtained from doing so. Every other instance of dead time cannot be removed in such a manner without irreparably affecting the essence of the game. If every instance of dead time were removed, you wouldn't be playing the same game. This is already proven to an extent by the existence of SM64's non-stop ROM hack. This mod makes it so that when Mario collects a star, he is not subject to any cutscene, plus he isn't kicked out of the level. It also removes the intro cutscene. From these changes alone, the world record in 120-star non-stop is cut by over half an hour from the vanilla 120-star world record, with a time of 103.17 by Soul Erica B. However, these simple changes obviously alter the game into a beast that is completely unrecognizable from SM64, reminding me much more of Super Mario Odyssey than anything else. Implementing changes like these into SM64 simply cannot be done. For SMB1, there is absolutely nothing that can be done, as nearly all of the dead time comes in the form of level completion and level transition cutscenes. Removing or altering any of these cutscenes would tamper with the quintessential frame rule system, and therefore could never be implemented in good faith. Even the start delay, the closest thing to an intro cutscene in SMB1, couldn't be removed because A. There is the potential for strategic variability in the start delay, unlike in SM64, B. In the case of longer start delays, select must be intermittently pressed in order to keep the game's demo from playing, and C. Starting the game at the right moment requires one's attention and good timing. Removing the start delay and replacing it with, for instance, a save state right before gaining control of Mario, though tempting, would essentially be the same as removing the short section of gameplay in the Sunshine intro sequence. This also cannot be done. So what have we proven? Are the naysayers right? Do I agree with their propositions? Is speedrunning a waste of time? Well, that I can't really say. Sorry to everyone who wants an exact opinion from me, but I honestly can't pick one side over the other. If we zoom out and look at a larger number of games, it seems that this issue has infiltrated a concerning amount of the popular ones. Virtually every Mario platformer, both Portal games, the older 2D Metroid games, and the 3D Zelda games being some of the worst offenders. If every game had such a massive amount of wasted time, then I would certainly question the point of speedrunning as is done by these vocal critics. However, many other popular, more recently released games are much more stingy with dead time, seemingly intentionally so, causing me to reevaluate the ubiquitousness of the issue. Games like Celeste, Super Meat Boy, Metroid Dread, Pizza Tower, Minecraft, even Geometry Dash, with the recent release of 2.2, along with other continuous platformers such as these. It is because of the existence of these games and ones like it that I cannot outright agree that speedrunning is a waste of time. What I do feel comfortable saying is that if you value your time, but you still want to speedrun, you should opt for a game like those just mentioned, as these recently released titles are very often designed with speedrunners in mind. However, as a blanket statement, I would lean towards saying that if you do value your time, and you don't have a lot of it to spend, you should probably steer clear of speedrunning as a whole. There is a reason why the main demographic for high and top level speedrunners are 13 to 18 years old. These are the people that have the most free time to spend, and, contrary to what many surmise, the most patient, at least when it comes to dead time in video games. In conclusion, I'm left mixed. I've spent 20 minutes talking about a problem with no real solution. I suppose all there is to do is concede to what the numbers and statistics tell us, that a large portion of SMB1 and SM64's playtime is not spent actually playing the game, rather it is spent doing nothing. When put in such a clinical manner, it can be pretty disheartening. However, all of the information I've deduced for this project is easily available, and I'm certain widely known, even if it isn't consciously mulled over. So, since it has been this way for so long, with little to no complaint or discussion save for the most extreme cases, maybe it isn't that big of an issue. Maybe people just don't really mind. I know that for a long time, I didn't. In the moment, it feels like just a few harmless seconds, and since the present is the only time that we can ever actually experience, it becomes hard to fathom how these moments can possibly accumulate into weeks, months, even years. But if given enough time to mount, it will grow to an uncomfortably large size right under our noses. I suppose that at a certain point, it just boils down to how much we actually value our time. If we take speedrunning to its logical end, dead time would be all that is left. If speedrunners had their way, every instance of gameplay would slowly be whittled down to nothing, while cutscenes and animations take up a greater and greater percentage of the run. Of course, in no game would it actually be possible to make this end scenario a reality, nor am I saying that this is something that should be dreaded. I love optimization in speedrunning more than a lot of people, as evidenced by the game I chose to play and how far I resolved to push it. Loving this process doesn't exactly alleviate the matter at hand, however. Speedrunning is a time wormhole, and the time it calls for, if one wants to become a high-level player, will be a large percentage of their free time. Now this on its own doesn't have to be a bad thing. Looking at reading, writing, exercising, the creative arts, or certain sports, all of these things would require a similar percentage of your time and focus, and they're celebrated for that fact. Only the most dedicated, right? However, the unfortunate thing about speedrunning is that the existence of dead time essentially negates up to half of the time you choose to sacrifice, thereby slowing your advancement to nearly half of what it would normally be. This issue simply doesn't exist if you are, say, writing a research paper or reading a book. Besides the time it takes to open the book or prepare yourself to write, there is no dead time in these activities. No time is vainly sacrificed. I intended for this brief analysis to be a small project just for myself. However, when I saw the extent of this issue, I thought it warranted a video exposing the severity of what I found. The concept of dead time is one that I've never heard anybody really talk about or take the time to delve into, but I believe it to be one of the most important things to be aware of in all of speedrunning, however painful this knowledge may be if you are a victim of it. Knowing about the existence of dead time, along with ways to alleviate its effects, can easily save multiple hours with only a few minor changes in the way you practice, thereby allowing these saved hours to be invested further into actual meaningful gameplay, or into one's personal life if one so chooses. Thinking about how much time has been stolen from all of us, across all of speedrunning, The number must accumulate into the thousands of years, with a large chunk of that time being spent on things easily avoidable. If anything I've said in this video ends up improving this issue in any capacity, I'll have succeeded. For that's the point of speedrunning in the first place, right? Optimization? Efficiency? The most tragic, pressing fact in life is time's finitude. For that reason, I believe that freeing ourselves from the binds of dead time, whenever feasible, to be absolutely necessary. Knowing that people have lost literal months of their lives on things that ought never have persisted in the first place, fills me with the most abject sadness. Throughout this project's production, I kept asking myself the same things. Am I crazy? Am I really the only one who thinks this is a major issue? However, one question acted as a beacon to my conviction. What are we more willing to sacrifice, the game and its purity, or ourselves? And, simply put, I knew my answer. Thanks you guys for watching my first actually edited and voiced over video. It certainly took a lot of work, but I think I'm satisfied with the end product. I get ideas for videos all the time, but this was the first time I've ever followed through on the production. I'm very proud of myself for finishing it. But anyways, I hope to hone my writing and editing skills in future videos, so if you guys enjoyed and want to see anything else like this, I'd be happy to hear what you have to say in the comments. So once again, I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you for watching.